Bonjour, Mungis indigenous Kazmang Dodem, Victor Gong Java. My given name is Herb Navigon. I'm a counselor here at Pick River First Nation. My spirit name is Little Loon, and my clan is the Loon. So that's my introduction. I want to open it up with a traditional prayer from the Ojibwe people. Al Bojo, Jem Nado, Mishomas, Nokomis, Mungis indigenous Kazmang Dodem, Victor Gong Java. Gogojman, Jem Nado, Mishomas, Nokomis, Jabijayak, Widokwashing, Alganian when Gidmag Zaman. I give greetings to the Great Spirit, to the grandmothers and grandfathers. I ask you to join us here today, for we too are poor in spirit. Miigwech.
Bonjour, Kenewia. Shinigan, Magizik, Migwan, Ninam, Dushnakas. Wazo Mako, Kichita, Shemako, Dodem. I'm going to read the preamble of the Negogwanda Gazette Nishnabé, which was given to us by the elders to read during our gatherings, whatever gatherings that we have, whether it's in council, whether it's when we deal with the industry, the politicians from both the federal and the provincial governments. And I'll read that in our language right now. Negogwanda Gazette Nishnabé. De binge gig gestaan is na ben ik king gebek digoan gedine mido wat diziwewan shiko de nebe eke no din gebe digos donan wi nag dudi we mang manipe ish man gang jbin gid give minyan gitwa when you go anishna bewan wa nag duni niddi Niswasi kino madewan Zagyaden Dibewan Midome mowan Nibak kwewan Dibat diziwewan Guid wad diziwewan Minwa Ishwe hiwan Jbin geg kima mindoduna Dibe binwi Winagi do wan diwan Kama di dina gibi ishwebig Minwa nejgo miwe ishwebig minwa yebe wa di ziwe bag. Oh, miigwech. Thank you.
Thank you, Arnold. We'll go to Art for an introduction. If you please introduce yourself.
Okay, I'm Arthur Fisher from Pick River First Nation. I'm a counselor, and I also serve as in a policing portfolio, and I've been on council for the last 30 years or so, and I've got the experience in there, so I'd like to thank that people for listening to me.
Herb, anything else you'd like to say with an introduction?
Yes, I've been on council for the last 2 years. Prior to that, I was living and working in Sudbury, Ontario. And most of my working life, I should say, I wrote papers on self-governance and treaties. So I have some academic knowledge of those issues and those goals that we have for Pick River. But since I got back, then I was able to put my learning into practice at the community level. And I really appreciate the people for giving me this opportunity to do my work here at the community. Miigwech.
Thanks. Arnold?
Oh, bonjour once again. My name is Mr. Arnold Michano, and I've been in council for a great many years also as Art. And my portfolio is governance. When I first started the governance probably about 6-7 years ago, there was a call put out by our band manager then, was Debbie Bushy, and nobody was responding. So I decided I went to talk to her, and I told her, I says, if nobody does not want to go to the governance meetings, I says, I'll only be happy to do it myself. And I did not really know what I was getting into, but I'm really happy now that what I've got into, and I know what the issues are all about, and what governance and the Constitution is all about. And I guess that's about it for now. Oh my gosh.
Aaron, if you could introduce yourself.
Hi, Erin Shaw with the Lands and Resources and Governance Department. Back in January, I was given the task, I guess, of doing the Constitution and consultation surrounding the Constitution and picking up, I guess, where the previous people have left off. And yeah, thank you.
And my name is Joe Moses. I recently joined Pick River as the Director of Lands, Resources, and Governance a couple of weeks ago. Member of the community, and very happy to be here. I want to welcome everybody that's joining us live, as well as the recording if you're taking the time to watch this now after the live session has been given. The program today will be available online as well through our website and other sources once we've gone through the session today, for anybody that wasn't able to catch it. The reason we're meeting today is to discuss a very important issue that involves everyone in the community, and that is the ratification of our community's constitution. On September 26th of this year, voters and band members will be asked to vote to ratify the Constitution as we are presenting to the community today. I want to thank Jason Burton and the PRDC tech team for joining us and making this all possible today. I want to thank our counselors for being here. I know all of you have invested a lot of time and effort into making the Constitution what it is. And we're also joined by one of our managers at the Lands and Resources, Aaron Shaw, who's been the project lead on the Constitution. The format for today is we're going to have a bit of a discussion about the Constitution, what it means to us, why it's important, the process for how we've gotten to where we're currently at, and the next steps in terms of where we go for the community and how the Constitution fits into that future. So we're going to have a bit of a discussion and ask some questions and have a bit of a conversation for about a half hour or so, and then we'll actually go through the Constitution and read it, and we encourage those of you who have copies at home to read along with it, or watch the recording at another time and write down any questions you have, as there'll be ample opportunity to reach out to counselors or staff to answer any of the questions you might have as a result of the Constitution. So thank you, and we'll get underway with our discussion. So the first question that we want to ask of ourselves is, what exactly is a Constitution, and why is it so important? So Aaron's been a project lead on actually going through the inner workings with our outside partners to develop what we have on the table. So Aaron, please describe to us exactly what a Constitution is.
Okay, so Constitution is setting out the applicable laws and lawmaking process for our community, and we're actually pretty fortunate to have the opportunity to meet with community members and the elders in the community to help us build the Constitution and establish historically what we would have done to govern ourselves, because prior to the Indian Act we were a self-governing nation, and hopefully after September 26, 2015 we're going to continue being a self-governing nation.
Excellent. Thank you, Aaron. So a pretty important document for us moving forward, and an important step moving forward, but not something new. Governance is something we've been doing since the time we've been in existence. Arnold, can you please describe to us the process for how the need for a Constitution arose for our community, and describe the process of why the Constitution has come about. Why do we need a Constitution in our community? What is the process that has got us here so far to the step where we're asking membership to vote on passing what we have in front of us today?
Thanks, Joey. I guess for the past 150 years, we have followed the Indian Act, and we know that the Indian Act has done nothing for every First Nation across Canada. More like there's more suppression than advancing forward. And the leadership throughout the country, they bang their heads, against the table of asking more revenue resources to work, whether it be health, education, recreation, housing, in all these institutions that we're presently running. They're short of funds, and by going to our self-government with the Constitution that we're developing here, and I certainly believe that once we have our own Constitution, we can move forward, because we are the ones that are going to develop our own laws and our own policies, and once this document is ratified, it's going to be a very powerful document that we have. And I'm glad to say that Pick River First Nation is one of the First Nations that are working on this document, and there are some other First Nations that already have ratified their constitutions, and one of them is Nipissing First Nation near North Bay, and there's one First Nation in Manitoulin Island with Kemicon, and also there's one in Henvey Inlet. I think they just ratified theirs probably a few months ago, and so I think it's very exciting, and it's going to be challenging, and I think our First Nations are going to really accomplish a hell of a lot, and especially working with their Truth and Reconciliation, which is going to happen, and the government is really going to implement each step of the way on the Truth and Reconciliation.
Thank you, Arnold. Art, a similar question to you. Why is the Constitution so important for our community, and why does it matter, in your own words, in your own perspective?
Well, to start off with, I think before the white man came here, all Native people had constitutions that they ruled themselves on. But when the white man came over, the government started putting in laws of their own, like the Indian Act, to control Native people and how they're going to live in their communities, which I thought is not the right thing to do with any human race, that as far as that goes, to suppress them like that, and that's how that harmed our people a lot, because of what happened with how the government handled our people, like the residential schools, for example, the day schools, all those things come into effect, and that affected our lives. We didn't have no control on how we're going to deal with our schools, or how we're going to teach our kids, or what's going to be a curriculum. I think it's important to have a curriculum that's standardized around the world, to bring it to our community and use that as our basis of teaching our kids how to live a life. And I think the Constitution is also vitally important, because it sets out the rules on how your community is going to be ruled or operate. There'll be a place there where it says how the governance is going to run. There'll be places where you can put your laws in, like education, any law, forestry, and laws you want to do on resources. You can make those kind of laws and say, this is how I'd like to see our traditional territory to be operating, not giving us a little 8-acre land saying, here, this is where you stay and live, and suppress us there and say you can't touch anything else outside of that. That was wrong. We fought for that for the longest time, to use our own traditional territory, and we did that here in Pick River. And I think internationally it's proven that indigenous people that have their own governance and have a system to operate far exceed First Nations that don't have a constitution or laws to run by. So I think it's very important that we do this, even though we do it ourselves now, but it's not recognized because we don't put it on paper. We got to do it with the way international people do it. Is you got to put it on paper, say this is how our country's going to run, this is how we're going to run our traditional territories, and that's how it's going to be. We have to do that so people outside of us and First Nations know what we're all about. I think that's why it's important to have a constitution also. And then when you want to work with companies, let's say a company wants to come and work in our traditional territory, if you have a constitution, they're more likely to come and say, okay, yeah, let's talk with these people because they're organized. They've got a constitution, they've got laws, we got something to go by and how to operate with them. You know, those kind of things. That's what people look for when they come and operate with you. From my understanding, what those when people are organized. So that's why I think it's important. And I'm rambling a little too far, but anyway, I'm just glad that I was able to say a little bit of how I feel this should be. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Art. Very powerful words in both you and Arnold's responses. Thank you for sharing that with us. A lot of what you said, to summarize, talked a lot about owning and creating your own path forward, establishing yourself as an independent body for which people want to do business with, that's organized, structured, and we have systems and processes in play that we've agreed upon. A lot of what that type of language is, Herb, is we're talking about sovereignty or self-governance is another way to kind of wrap up what Herb and Arnold have, or Arnold and Art have just shared with us. Can you elaborate for us on what exactly is sovereignty and self-government, and why is it so important to Pick River?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Joey. First of all, I'll describe what it's not. It's not a national sovereignty piece of paper. It's a community constitution, which means Pick River has outlined its land base, and that's our area of jurisdiction, if you want to put it that way. And jurisdiction is really important because the Indian Act took away all our jurisdictions. We couldn't make decisions on our health, our education. For example, when my dad was growing up, Clamnabigon, if he went past grade 6, he would be disenfranchised. He'd lose his status as a native person. That's how they controlled, and it started to eliminate the treaty, the members. So sovereignty then will restore all that jurisdiction back, will restore our ability to make power decisions over our land, over our community, and over the waters, and even the airspace. We don't have that. And today, self-government, I prefer to call it sovereignty, because sovereignty is a stronger word. Self-government just means that, self-government. But sovereignty embodies all those other areas, and embodies a jurisdiction. And so I think for change, this is the way we should be moving towards this change, and I'm very happy to see that happening in our community here at Pick River. And we can even change our name of our community if we so desire, and we can do a lot of things that we can't do under the current system. For example, just recently in this area, we couldn't even issue a permit to hold your land. In this community, under the Indian Act, it's only recognized by the Indian Act, but it's not recognized in the courts. But this time, when we do our own lots and dividing our community houses into lots, that's going to be recognized under the Canadian judicial system. Plus, we also have the opportunity, as Arnold said, to build our own jurisdiction. And the fancy word for jurisdiction just means legal reasoning. That's all that means. Now we don't have that legal reasoning ability. And so we need to educate ourselves to move forward in this path, in this direction. And we have very sophisticated counselors and band members that know all these issues. And we just have to start putting our energy together and moving forward with this Constitution, as I understand it. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Herb. Each of you have mentioned other areas or other First Nations that have been doing this type of stuff. You talked about the Indian Act, a lot of mention around the Indian Act and how it kind of dictates Aboriginal people and First Nations on how they do things. Arnold, the Constitution is specific to Pick River, but is there any benefit to the Constitution to First Nations people across the province or Canada? What impact does the passing of our Constitution have on Aboriginal peoples as a whole?
Well, to start off with, Pick River belongs to the 39 First Nations, which belongs to the Union of Ontario Indians, and they developed a Chiknak-Nagawan there, a big constitution, which represents the 39 First Nations, and the other First Nations right across Canada. I'm not too sure what they're doing, but I've heard rumors that other provinces there, they are working on it yet, but speaking on behalf of the union there, we as a First Nation and First Nations across the union area, I think we were going to, those that developed this Constitution and get it ratified and passed by their people, they're going to succeed. And if they really understand where are we going to get the money from, and it's called own source revenue, and it's from the natural resources that we do have out there, whether it be forestry, mining, water, wind power, solar, tourism. You could name a bunch of economic opportunities, and that's how we have to operate. But just with speaking in those terms, we are not going to let the Indian Affairs off the hook. We're going to try to get as much money as we can off them until we are quite self-sufficient and that we could move forward. And speaking of in regards to Pick River, I think we are just about there. It's just a matter of a few more projects that we're going to build within our traditional territory. And once we get those done, then we will be quite sufficient, and we're going to move forward. And I've been to many of those sessions, gatherings together with our local First Nations around Robinson Superior, and I've told them, I says, you know what, we have to keep moving here, and Pick River is not going to be stopped by nobody. We're going to move forward, and if they want to follow suit, it's entirely up to them. But it's quite exciting, and it's going to be challenging, and I say Pick River, we're going to succeed.
Excellent. Thank you, Arnold.
Yep.
For those who are watching live streaming, we've got a couple of texts. Thank goodness for technology letting us know that the screen is black. We apologize for that. In order to fix that, we would actually have to stop the presentation as is right now, restart the program, and to get the picture up. But we are recording the picture, and everything's working well with the recording. So what we'll do is we'll proceed with the audio only for now, and we can air the recording in full with the picture at a later time, maybe when more people are home in the evenings. So apologize for that. We're going to continue with the audio, and the picture will be available online, and as well as aired again at another time on community television. Thank you, Arnold, for that answer on the impacts of Aboriginal people as a whole. I'm going to go to Art now, and the three of you and chief and councils before and the present chief and council have done a lot of work along with the staff at Pick River to bring the Constitution to where it is right now. Can you describe for us or just explain what exactly has been the role of chief and council to this point, and what is the role of chief and council moving forward as it pertains to the Constitution?
Well, I'll start off with, I think every First Nation in Canada recognized the fact that we all, as First Nations, we needed a constitution. So the Union of Ontario Indians did the lead project in establishing a working group to make constitutions and developing constitutions. They even developed one for the 39 First Nations itself as a constitution, but each community will have their own constitution, which will supersede the Union Constitution, because the Union's Constitution can't come and say this is what you got to do, because we have our own and will supersede what the Unions say. So our the local constitutions will be the strongest there is to enforce, and particularly we're seeing the opportunity here to break away from the old Indian Act and saying, let's start acting like we really own this land. Let's do it. I mean, let's not wait for somebody. Nobody's going to come and tell you, here's your land back. Nobody's going to tell you that. Here's your resources back. Nobody's going to tell us that. We got to get up and stand up and say, hey, this land was all ours one time. We never gave it up. We made friendship treaties so we wouldn't fight them when they crossed the land. But we never gave up our lands, our resources. That's the first thing we have to understand. And then from there, we build our constitutions to how we're going to develop this to happen. And what the council itself is not going to build this constitution. This constitution is going to be made up from the people, feeding into like what we're doing today. We're just educating you what we're doing and how we're going to start process and educate everybody in the community, and even all band members to say, this is how far we are and this is what we got to do. Put your input, put your input, put your input. We want input from you people to say what's going to drive us, to say how our constitution is going to look. And I think that's very important and key. And like I said before, once you get to organize yourself like that, people are going to look at you and say, yeah, you're right. Because not a while ago, let's say, about 4 years ago, we made our own law. We went ahead and made a law, like our own self. We said, this is how we called it Consultation and Accommodation Law. We made that up as a council. We didn't ask people or anything. We said, we'll do it because we have to get something started. So we did that, and we sent it out to every proponent, the governments we seldom soon, because at that time, people in BC were winning court cases on consultation and accommodation. And he says, we never ceded our land. We can use that same process and we'll start it. So we did it. But after that happened, we gave it to MNR, provincial government, federal government, all the mining proponents around the area. We gave them that information. And by geez, you'd be surprised what happened after that. Every one of those people came and meet with us, come and talk to us, came and see us, come and talk to us, come and see us. They all did that because we had a law out there that said this is how we want to be treated when you are working out in our lands. So that worked out pretty good. And I'm hoping something similar like that will happen with all the resources. Like even though it's not completely law yet, what we did, it's going to be after we make our constitution. We'll just entrench it into our constitution, and that will be law for us. And I think that's, I'm excited about this because there's a lot of things we can do on our own capacity to show people that we can do things that are traditional territories. And that's what I think this Constitution is going to be all about. How we're going to operate in our traditional territory.
Thank you, Art. And I'll take this time just to thank you and all the past chief and councils who have worked on this for the leadership you've shown in getting us to where we're at. It's important. It is an important step, and it's also important to note the opportunity that the community has to have the interest and the input on the laws moving forward and the Constitution as it sits. Arnold, we've talked about what Chief and Council's role is in the Constitution. What is every Pick River band member's role in the Constitution with regard to how they provide the input? But once this thing's passed, what do we do with it? How do I, as a individual Pick River band member, use this Constitution?
Well, it's once this Constitution is ratified and passed, and we have to deal with other issues such as membership, election codes, and lands and water, preservation, protection of management of environment, and so on. There's a whole bunch of big lists here, and this is what this list that we do have here. If we have left anything off, we will ask the membership, what do you see in this document that we should add or leave out? And if they want something done in regards to, say, one good example would be a membership code. How do we work this? And we will gather, the people will be gathered, and we will talk about that certain issue, whether it's good or bad. And if it's good, the people will ratify it, and we'll take it from there. And this will include all this big list that we have, the jurisdiction and authority, and hoping that everything will run smoothly.
Excellent. Thank you. Herb, in the Constitution it talks about the type of person or the community member that's able to vote must be of legal voting age of 18 years or older. What message do you want to send to the youth in our community about the Constitution that might not be able to vote today, but one day are going to have the opportunity to vote? What should we be saying to the youth in the community about this Constitution?
Well, the elders that live in this community talk about making decisions that affects 7 generations ahead of us. And the youth are part of that generation that will be reaching the voting age, and the decisions that we make today obviously will affect them. So we need to reinforce how important voting is. Voting is not a privilege, it's a right. There's a difference between privilege and voting. For example, in Canada, Native people got their vote in 1962. But prior to that, we couldn't vote. We were regarded as wards of the Crown. Of course, that was all changed with our right to vote. And so our young people need to understand a little bit about the history of our participation in the so-called Canadian democracy and how it works. And so there needs to be some kind of curriculum or whatever you want to call it put together to inform them on their rights, not their privileges. Like a driver's license is a privilege, but a driver's license is not a right. You have to work to get it. But here, when you're 18, you already automatically have the right to vote. You don't have to work for it. It's just there, and so our young people have to understand they have to exercise that right to get something meaningful done in our community in terms of their participation and their ability to affect change for themselves and the generations coming behind them. So that's critically important in constitutions around the world of voting. Americans are having a lot of problems now. They're trying to exclude the black people from voting only if they have certain kind of ID. Of course, that's not going to happen here because we know who we are. We know our people. We know our young. And the only controls we'll have in place, we'll make a voting list for anybody that turns 18. Then he automatically becomes a member with his rights and privileges to vote for different councils, different policies, and consultation and ratification, as Art was talking about. Consultation doesn't mean a simple phone call, and it means more than that. It means engagement and dialogue. And the voting privilege, voting rights, I should say, for young people is one of the most important activities that the council and its members can organize for their young, because they're the future leaders and the future generations behind us that will make these decisions for future generations that will follow. As we're not always going to be here, it's a given that, you know, living is part of dying, and all of us won't be sitting here one of these days. So the young people will have to take over if they have the information and the will to do this voting and to work and move our community forward in the areas of health, education, social services, and other areas, economic development, land use, all those areas that Arnold and Art talked about. Miigwech.
Thank you. Arnold, Art, anything you'd like to say to the youth out there to elaborate on what Herb maybe said?
Well, I think dealing with the youth, our council tried to instill a youth council to get the youth involved somehow or another, but it always seemed to never work. We're going to have to think of new approaches how to make this work, because as First Nation people, everybody regards their children as very valuable. That's the key thing in life, is your children, your youngest youths. You got to take care of those people all the time. And I think that's why, I know we started off by being a youth center, start them off there, and then we were hoping they can start their own little councils and start training to become, well, to see how we do business and learn to train to do those things. And I think that's something along that line we have to revive again, because in other communities, I've been to many meetings where, like the union has a youth council where youths come to that thing. The Chiefs of Ontario has a youth council that people, representatives that come there. And so is the AFN. They have a youth council where youth come to meet and have dialogue on what they feel about what's going on in their communities. So, and this is where these youth councils that fit into or drive into or work with the other youths around the world, around Canada, saying this is the common theme of our people. Let's do something about it, you know. So in that way, they can make their common theme known by numbers and saying, we mean something. We got a voice, you know. You have to do something for us. And I think that's important, to have the youth have a voice. And that's about all I can put into that for now. Thank you.
Fantastic words, Art. Arnold, any message to the youth with regards to what the Constitution is and what it means for them?
Yes, it's it's very, very exciting that this Constitution is being developed now today, and hopefully it's going to get ratified. And this Constitution is going to work for those youth that are coming up, whether they be leaders, managers, or entrepreneurs, or whatever that they are going to pursue, and it's going to help them quite a bit, because this document is going to be a very, very powerful document. And with those youth that are out there, you know, they got that opportunity now to get that good education that they have, and we have a good system in Pick River in our schooling, and also when they travel to Marathon to go to school there in high school and go to university. We have to encourage youth to get out there and get that education, and pursue your careers, whatever you want. And if you want to be entrepreneurs within our traditional territory, by all means, go for it. And because this is going to be very, very exciting, and it's going to be very, very profitable, in my personal opinion. What did I see, Miigwech?
Thank you, Arnold.
Yep.
That that summarizes and concludes our conversation around questions for what the Constitution and what it means. I hope it provides some background to the listeners and the viewers out there. We encourage you to, again, reach out to us with any questions or concerns or ideas you may have. Aaron, we've come a long way. We're looking to ratify the vote September 26th with the council elections. What's the next steps for the Constitution? We're being presented today with familiarizing the community with what it is. Where do we go from here? What is the process to how this Constitution gets into action?
Pretty much, we're going to continue with the community consultation process. We do have community family meetings, and we're also open. So if you have families out there who would like to sit down with us and have us go through the Constitution with you to help you understand it better, you could just contact the office. You could give me a call at 229-8900 extension 222. Or you could send an email to governance, governance, at pickriver.com to also arrange family meetings as well. Along with that, we do have 2 tea house sessions that's going to happen at the Lands and Resources building. Those dates I have, unfortunately, I forgot my paper that's sitting in the printer at the office. So I'm going to post those dates as soon as we get back there. I'll post them on the pickriver.com website and also on our Lands and Resources website on social media. We're going to have 2 larger meetings held at the band office here with the community and the group. The first one is going to be in mid-August, I believe. The last one is going to be September 2nd, and that's going to start at 5 p.m. and we will have a feast to start that meeting off with. And again, more information will be posted about that after we finish up here. And I'm not too sure what else we have. Yeah, so I think that is what we have leading up until September 26th, which we hope to see the majority of you out there to vote, to cast your vote for the Chinook Gateway.
Excellent. Thank you, Aaron. Aaron, if you could maybe read through the Constitution now, I think it would be good for us all to go through the Constitution, read through it collectively. Again, encourage people to follow along with the video and participate as we go through this meaningful agreement. It's my understanding, what I've learned from the Chief and Council and Aaron, that the document you'll be quite pleased to see is pretty general, broad and not too specific, and purposely I believe it has been designed that way to provide a foundation upon which all the other laws and ideas and governance issues can be built upon. So, Aaron, if you could lead us through, read through the Constitution, please.
Okay. So, Beatgun Shakdewan, the preamble. We are the Anishinaabeg of Beatgun First Nation. We affirm our responsibility of our Aboriginal rights area and our inherent rights to govern this area exclusively or jointly with other First Nations. Attached at Schedule A is a map of our Aboriginal title area. We recognize that we have inherent rights to govern ourselves. We recognize and honor inherent responsibilities to our ancestors and future generations. And we affirm that this Beatgun Chinakgewin is our main law, which is consistent with the values, principles, and spiritual beliefs upon which our lives are based. Citation. This document shall be referred to as the... Sorry to interrupt, but they're having... People aren't able to see it. Do you know that? Yeah. Okay. Sorry about that. Citation. This document shall be referred to as the Beatgun First Nation Constitution or Beatgun Chinakgewin. Official language. Anishinaabe Modowan is the official language of the Beatgun First Nation. English is the working language of the Beatgun First Nation. Interpretation. For the purposes of this law, the following definitions will apply. Anishinaabeg of Beatgun First Nation means members or citizens of our First Nation. Chief and Council means the executive decision-making body made up of the chief and councillors of the Beatgun selected in the accordance with our First Nation laws passed pursuant to the Beatgun Chinooktgeewin. Prior to such laws being enacted, consistent with the election sections of the Indian Act, RSC 1985, C1-5 as amended from time to time. Court of Contempt jurisdiction, unless otherwise indicated, means the Federal Court of Canada or any other court that has the jurisdiction to hear a matter under this law. Eligible voter means a citizen of Beatgun First Nation who has attained the age of 18 years old by or on the date of the vote or referendum. First Nation law means the law by our First Nation in accordance with the Beatgun Chinooktgeewin. Purpose and application. The purpose of this Beatgun Chinooktgeewin is to set out the applicable laws and lawmaking process of the Beatgun First Nation. This Beatgun Chinooktgeewin is the main law of Beatgun First Nation. All applicable laws, regulations, rules, and policies shall be harmonized with and consistent with this Beatgun Chinooktgeewin. In the event of a conflict or inconsistency between this Beatgun Chinooktgeewin and other laws, regulations, rules, practices, and policies, the Beatgun Chinooktgeewin shall prevail in the extent of the conflict. Governing institutions. The members, citizens of Beatgun First Nation, consistent with their customs, traditions, and practices, hereby establish and recognize Beatgun First Nation's Chief and Council as the official elected government of our members and citizens. The Chief and Council may establish or delegate some of their authority to other entities, committees, boards, etc., in the best interest of Beatgun First Nation.
Thank you, Aaron. We'll stop there briefly. I think the first part of the document is very key, as it asserts very specifically who we are, what our title is, and our right, and further defines the purpose and meaning of this document. But Arnold, we just heard Aaron talk about governing institutions. Can you explain to us what are governing institutions, and what are the types of the entities or committees and boards that we could set up in the future? What exactly does that section mean to you?
Well, the first one I'd like to talk about is the judicial. How do you pronounce that?
Judicial.
And I believe in many First Nations in our territory, we have a lot of people that have that capacity to hold these institutions, and I know we do have a lot of lawyers. Clemens has his son, and there's a few others from Pick River that are lawyers, and so there should not be a problem in developing that institution, because if they're willing to do it, and we can't do it on our own without going into the non-native court system. So that's number one, and there's other ones here, such as that we do have already, is education. We have a board of directors. We have a Pick River Hydro, and we have a board of directors, and we have PRDC. They have a board of directors. We have all these institutions that are in place already, and they are very, very successful. And we just a matter of putting them and implementing into this Constitution that we do have here.
Excellent. So very much it's us taking what we say we're going to do and putting it into action through these different bodies that are out there.
Right.
Excellent.
Yep.
Aaron, if you can continue point number 16.
Okay. Jurisdiction and authority. Chief and Council of the Beatgun First Nation may pass any First Nation law for the betterment of our citizens and our lands, including but not limited to membership and citizenship, elections and referendum, access to and residence in the territory, lands, water, air, and resources, preservation, protection, and management of the environment, including animals and fish, economic life, including commerce, labor, agriculture, grazing, hunting, trapping, fishing, and forestry, fishing, forestry, mining, and management of natural resources in general, the operation of businesses, trades, and professions, transfer and management of public monies and other assets, taxation, family matters including marriage, divorce, adoption, and child custody, property rights including succession and estates, education, social services and welfare including child welfare, health, language, culture, values, and traditions, criminal law and procedure, the administration of justice including the establishment of courts and tribunals with the civil and criminal jurisdiction, policing, public works and housing, local institutions, and all other areas as deemed necessary by our Chief and Council, including but not limited to the laws applicable to the Anishinaabe of Beatdogon First Nation and other governments. Chief and Council will determine the process of timing for the enactment of First Nation laws to come into force consistent with our customs, traditions, and practices.
Excellent. Thank you, Aaron. So we've listed a whole realm of areas, I guess, we could explore or create laws in. Art, I just want you to clarify this Constitution. Aaron listed a whole bunch of things there, including family matters, education, health. Does this mean that we're passing laws for these areas? What exactly does this section mean in the Constitution for us?
Okay, and the Constitution, I think under the Constitution, as we become, our capacity becomes to be able to do these things, we can do like membership codes that we can, that'll come under that. That'll be a law under the Constitution that will be there entrenched. But then if you want to change that, there's a process you do. I think we talked about that earlier, that there's a appeals process or something like that that you can do. Elections will be in there. All those things will be in there that's important to us. What I see in there, I think a lot of people are going to question. And even I know people don't like this, but it says taxation there. But I think that... I don't think that's something we want to start taxing people. That doesn't mean that. But it gives us the opportunity, say, we don't have to make the Constitution, let's say 30, 40 years, 100 years from now, things might change. We might become such a self-sufficient organization that we can not necessarily tax our individuals, but we can start taxing our companies to put in X amount of dollars into a coffer that the people could use in our community. That kind of taxing. But I know people don't like the idea of taxation, and I don't blame them because I don't care for that either myself. But I don't think it was intended to personally tax people. It's there to tax people that use our resources and all that, like mining and all that stuff. When they come in and work in our traditional territory, we'll put a tax on it. We'll have a law saying that. Here's a law saying that you got to pay taxes to us because you work in our traditional territory. You pay us there. You know, It's not for the individual. It's for the companies and conglomerates that come and work in our territory. I think that's what that taxation is going to be. Sure.
So this section lays out a number of the conversations we can have as a community about how we're going to govern ourselves. But to be very clear, when we have these conversations or these issues come up, there'll be a process whereby community members will have input to discuss whether they want to pass or fail whatever is being proposed at that time.
Yeah, exactly. The taxation system.
Excellent. Yeah. If we can continue with section 18.
Okay, amendment and repeal. This Beatdogon Shnok may be amended by following each of the following steps. A. Resolution of Beatdogon First Nation Chief and Council proposing an amendment or amendments to the Beatdogon Shnok Beatdogon First Nation Chief and Council to ensure information sessions for Anishinaabe of Beatdogon First Nation are conducted regarding to the amendments to the Beatdogon Shnok presenting the proposed amendments to Anishinaabe of Beatdogon First Nation voters to approve by vote at meeting of our First Nation called by Chief and Council, and if at least 50% plus one of eligible voters in attendance at the meeting approve the proposed amendments, the amendments become effective in law the next business day or a day set by Chief and Council.
Thank you, Aaron. Herb, this section here talks about, I guess, the process that Art just touched on in the previous section. What's the importance, and how do you explain or describe what this amendment process is in the repeal process? The decision-making process. How does that? How do you explain that?
Well, for example, Art talked at length about taxation. Taxation is a dirty word in Indian country. Nobody wants to even talk about it or consider it. But as Art says, over time that may change, because most of us that work off the reserves pay taxes to the provincial and federal governments. And at taxation time, we have to file our income taxes. But for me, when I was working off the reserve, I paid about a third of my salary to taxes to the provincial and federal governments. I would have much rather pay my taxes to Pick River. And I believe there's Native people out there that are working off the reserve that may want to consider that. And there's some that I know that would do that off the bat, but there's no, they don't have a mechanism or authority in which to transfer their taxes from the federal and provincial to our governments, and not necessarily Pig River, but all First Nation governments. There's a huge workforce out there that work off the reserve. And I believe a lot of those individuals would like to start paying taxes to their own communities rather than the provincial and federal government. So that's one solution around the amending formulas and repeal processes. Amendment for me is just a fancy word for change. You know, we got all these areas of lawmaking abilities that the draft talks about, the Chinook Nagawan. Any one of these enactment into a law, like criminal law and procedure, if the members don't like that, they could change it. They have it within their power to make changes through a formal appeal process, which is critical in Anishinaabe country or in any democracy. If you don't have an appeal process, what you have is a dictatorship, and that's the last thing our people want to do. They don't want to set up another system like the Indian Act, which is basically a dictatorship over our way of life and over our lands. But this appeal process is, for me, necessary, and not only necessary, but it's much desired by a lot of our people that are sitting in the communities, that if they don't like that law, well, let's change it. And that's the appeal process. And we have to establish a mechanism here at Pick River on how that appeal process will look like, different steps we have to take to move the appeal process. But then I think the chief and council would adjudicate that. They would make the decisions because they're the executive body of this First Nation. And so somebody has to make the decisions, and basically it's the chief and council. And we can hire consultants to do that, make recommendations to us, or we have to do it ourselves. It's entirely up to the chief and council. Okay, me good.
Thank you. Thank you, Aaron. If we could continue with section 19.
Yeah, the enactment clause. The Beatgun Chinookawan shall be ratified by a vote of eligible voters of Beatgun First Nation pursuant to the ratification process set out in Schedule B to this law. General provision. Servability. In any part, subpart, section, and subsection of this law is for any reason held invalid by a decision of the Court of Contempt jurisdiction, the invalid section will be severed from and not affect the remaining provisions of this law. Singular. The purposes of interpretation of this law, the plural includes the singular and singular includes the plural. Headings. The section headings contained in this law are for the reference purposes only and shall not affect in any way the meaning or interpretation of this law. Enforcement. Chief and Council or its designates have full authority to enforce any provision of this law. Coming into force. This law shall come into force and effect on October 16th, 2015.
Thank you, Aaron, for leading us through that read-through. I want to thank Herb and Art and Arnold for your insight on clarifying for our members the interpretation of the various sections of the Constitution. So we've had a fairly lengthy discussion, and we've gone through a read-through as a community here. I just want to go around the table one last time for any final thoughts that any of you may have regarding the Constitution, and we'll start with Herb and make our way around.
Thank you, Joe. You know, in all our meetings, important meetings, we usually do a smudge. And a smudge really is to clean your mind of any negative thoughts we may have before we enter the circle, and also to clean our bodies of negative energy, bad feelings, basically. And the last one is to clean our souls. We need to have clean souls when we stand together to make our presentations to each other, but we also invite the spirits into our circle when we smudge. So our spirit should be clean when we're standing in front of the Creator and the grandfathers. And I brought with me today my talking stick, Anishinaabe Mitig it's called. And it has the 4 colors on it, the 4 colors of the medicine wheel. The 4 colors are really important for First Nations people since time immemorial, and they all come from the nature, those colors. The way it was explained to me, if you look at the sky in the morning in the east, if you look at the sky, it's kind of reddish pink. So red comes from the east, and the sun moves from east to west, and at midday the sun faces south, and that's the color yellow. It represents time and relationship. And black, when the sun sets, is everything becomes dark, and that's where the color black sits. And the north wind in the wintertime, this part of the world is covered under a white blanket. So those are the 4 colors of the medicine wheel. And the final one that we rarely talk about is the color green, and that's the color of the earth. And all these colors live on this planet. It's our home. And we are the custodians of these teachings. It's our job to look after these teachings and share them with the 4 colors. So that's important in terms of our own jurisdiction, our own understanding of who we are as a people and where we come from. Miigwech.
Thank you, Herb. Art, closing thoughts?
Well, I say get out there and vote for the Constitution. It's so important for our community to have this process, because if we don't have it, we're going to sit like this for the next 100 years with hardly any progress. But I do feel with a Constitution and laws and how we're going to run our community and our country, we're going to progress a lot faster and be right up there with the top-notch world leaders. Mm-hmm. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Art. Arnold, closing thoughts?
Yeah, it's it's very, very interesting here that we're developing our Constitution right now, because it's going to work in conjunction with our land claim that we do have, and but those 2 together, the document is going to be very, very, very powerful. And with the land claim that we have, I never use the word if we win. I always use the word when Pick River wins that land claim, and this is what's going to happen. We are going to win. We have so much we had a lot of help from the past elders that were around. A lot of research has been done, and it's been proven that this is our traditional territory, because we've been here for 10,000 years, if not more. And also what I wanted to share was, as you go through this this Beektagon Chiknak Nagawan. You notice that Pick River wasn't in there. We're going to use a Beektagon Chiknak Nagawan, which is the big law that we are developing here. And there's going to be a special ceremony before we vote on this, and I would encourage all the pipe carriers to come when that date is set, and when we change our name from Pick River to Beektagon Nishnabé. So I want you pipe carriers and all your traditional people to come out, because that's going to be an exciting time when we do our name change, and it's exciting. It's really exciting to have our Chiknak Nagawan going to be ratified, and the land claim at the same time, not at exactly the same time, but it's in the near future. So it's what did I say? Chimigwish, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Arnold. Aaron, want to thank you for all the work you've done, and from an administrative point, leading, organizing these meetings, and compiling information, working with our outside partners. Key dates, they'll be available on the website, by email. Family consultations coming up, and of course the key date to get out on September 26th and vote, as well as the other Constitution information sessions you reminded us of. Want to thank Aaron once again for joining us. Arnold, thank you for being here. Art, Herb, taking the time to go through this important and exciting time with us as a community. Herb, if you'd close us out with a prayer, we'll conclude our session.
Miigwech Bojo Menoa Gshemnedo Mishomas Nokomas Gojman Menoa Tubijayaka Vigidne Sheng Jamajayanga Chimigwech for today. Miigwech.
Are we off the air?